Hey everybody, Dan here with Pain for You. Today I wanted to talk about multiple chemical sensitivities. And this came up through somebody who was commenting and saying, how am I supposed to go on and live my life when I can't go anywhere because of all these sensitivities? So, just to be very, very clear, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm a regular guy. My experience in this comes from studying chronic pain, how the brain works, brain science, really understanding the primary purpose of the brain. But also, prior to getting really involved in this pain world, this chronic symptom world, this neuroplastic, neural circuit type of pain, I ran an air quality company. So I sold air cleaning equipment, so air purifiers, air cleaners, primarily targeting tobacco smoke. So I did absolutely run into some people who were looking for a solution, living in an apartment building or condo where the neighbors were smoking. So I do have a lot of experience with this, and not necessarily from a scientific perspective, but from an observer's standpoint, because I've spoken to many people with chemical sensitivities and got a chance to hear their stories, and there's definitely some common threads here. So, you know what? I forgot to breathe. I'm going to just take a couple of them before I launch into this topic. But that's a little bit of an intro here. Breathe in the clarity. Exhale the doubt. See if you can relax your muscles as you just take a little bit fuller breath. You don't have to do anything crazy breathing wise. All right. So, multiple chemical sensitivities. It's a really big deal because some of the responses and reactions to chemicals can be very severe. Some of the people I talked to in the smoking environment where people were being dramatically affected by neighbors who were smoking had situations where, for example, the husband couldn't smell the smoke at all, but yet the woman couldn't even live in or sleep in her own apartment. Some of these people were like sleeping in their car or renting hotel rooms, but the hotel rooms they couldn't live in because of the cleaning detergents and things that were utilized within the hotel. So some of these people really felt like they had nowhere safe that they could go at all. And their entire system was just danger alert on everything and anything. So how does this happen? All right, I believe, number one, the brain is a danger alert device. The primary job of the brain is to keep us safe and keep us alive, primarily. And so, as we experience scary things, dangerous things, reactions to things, the brain learns quickly and goes, "Ooh, that's dangerous, I got to remember that." Or, "That's dangerous, I got to remember that." In the case of multiple chemical sensitivities, this one lady's story was that she had asthma growing up as a child, and her parents smoked, and several times the asthma attacks were severe enough that she ended up in the hospital. In a couple of cases, as a 7-year-old, she was brought into the hospital and stayed overnight and was left there. Her parents went home. And so this is no judgment about what happened. Form your own opinions on that. But the key here is, as a young child, this girl learned very early that smoke is dangerous. And I can end up in the hospital and be left alone and abandoned and everything else. So as she became older and older, her brain, which was simply on the lookout for dangers, learned to become more and more sensitive. Now, the example where her husband couldn't even smell the smoke, but she could, and not only could she smell the smoke, but she started reacting with weakness, nausea, dizziness, feeling like she's going to pass out. very, very severe symptoms, and those symptoms are very real. Now, this person wasn't imagining it. They weren't crazy. They had simply, through exposure in the earlier days, their brain became highly sensitive, hypervigilant to any perceived dangers like that. And so, anytime there was a whiff of smoke, the brain launched into, warning, 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 and started, providing symptoms to say, get out, that's dangerous. All that said, some people will say, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, if he can't even smell it, how can she be having this bad of a reaction? It's because the brain controls everything. And the brain truly being a danger warning system designed purely for survival and safety can literally increase the sense of smell to the point where this person with chemical sensitivities has a much higher sensitized sense of smell than the average person who does not have the danger signals screaming at them all the time. So they are able to perceive and smell legitimate, real chemicals, smoke, whatever it may be, that other people whose systems are a little bit more balanced are not able to perceive. And so multiple chemical sensitivities is, in my opinion, just a really, really high state of danger alert. And as a result, the sense of smell becomes elevated, and they can smell things that other people can't. And it doesn't mean they're nuts. They're not crazy. They are absolutely on target. My mom has this to a very mild degree. But, I'll be at her house and she'll run around and she'll start closing the windows quickly. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? She says, oh, I smell the neighbors burning their fireplace. I didn't even notice it. But she did. And so she's very sensitive to those things and reacts to those types of things. At one point, I let her borrow an air purifier, which actually created a slight but safe amount of ozone. Well, within 30 minutes, she was getting a headache and she had to shut it off. So, due to some circumstances in her life, her sense of smell and her danger signals were easily triggered to the point where she became more sensitive. So multiple chemical sensitivities is, in my opinion, just a heightened sense of vigilance in the central nervous system, the sense of smell. And, we've heard of people who, like blind people, for example, their sense of hearing is outstanding. Why? Because the brain says, okay, we can't see anything, so let's increase the ability to hear. And vice versa. People who can't hear have the ability to see better. Blind people can literally learn to read with their fingertips on Braille. And it was interesting. I got a phone recently for my mom, who's a little bit hard of hearing. And it was one of these phones where you can really, really, really boost the volume in the earpiece, the handset, or also on speakerphone. But it was interesting. The box came with, instructions in Braille. And I was feeling this, and it literally just felt like a page with bumps on it. But for blind people, their sense of touch, can become so highly sensitized and accurate that they can literally read these bumps on the page. And so our system is incredibly adaptable, incredibly capable of heightening the various senses, whether it be taste, smell, touch, hearing, vision, whatever it may be, in order to keep us safe. So in the case of chemical sensitivities, it is simply a matter of exposure. So another story, let's say you're walking through the mall and somebody dropped a bottle of perfume, in the store, and you walk by and you get a headache. The next time you're in an elevator and you smell some perfume, you may get another headache. And then over time, with repeated exposures, the brain just becomes more and more and more sensitive to the point where Some people can't go into like a Macy's or a JCPenney's because the perfume counter is toxic. And they're not imagining it. They're not crazy. Their brain is literally saying, oh my God, we smell perfume. That was dangerous. You've had multiple headaches, dizziness, nausea in previous exposures to that. Get out. And the symptoms turn on to protect us from those dangerous chemicals. So, for anybody living with chemical sensitivities, you're not crazy. This is exactly what's going on. Your brain is just really working overtime to protect you. For anybody living with somebody with multiple chemical sensitivities, your partner, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, they're not crazy. They have just been exposed to things that have given them a reaction, and very quickly their brain latches onto that as a dangerous situation. And the brain becomes highly sensitized, the nervous system, the sense of smell, whatever it may be, hey Finn, really just turns up the vigilance to keep us safe. That's nothing more. It's nothing more than that. So for anybody with any judgment, this is a legitimate, real thing. The symptoms are real. The heightened sense of smell, for example, and chemical sensitivities, even this, the skin, the absorption onto the skin, it's all driven by fear and a heightened vigilance by this nervous system. And so, what's the way out? Honestly, it's the same stuff I talk about with regard to chronic pain or other chronic symptoms. It's learning what's going on so the knowledge can say, wow, I'm not crazy. I just have a nervous system and a brain that's operating on high vigilance for things that the brain has learned and decided a long time ago are extremely dangerous. But you can unlearn it, right? We can teach the brain to settle things down. Now, I do not do a lot of coaching or do not have a lot of expertise as to how to fix this. But I do know that the same exact processes that work really well for TMS, this mind-body pain, this neural circuit pain that's created in the brain as a protection mechanism, the same exact soothing and relaxation and knowledge therapy can absolutely make a huge difference on chemical sensitivities. Because when the brain starts to feel like, oh my God, we're really safe, I can smell perfume in an elevator, I may not like it, but I don't have to launch into these symptoms of nausea, dizziness, feeling like you're going to pass out, weakness, right? And so we can teach the brain virtually anything here, that these neural circuit pains and these symptoms are not necessary to keep us safe. And when it comes to chemical sensitivities, we don't need to have these extreme reactions to keep us safe. And we can literally teach the brain, which controls the entire nervous system and all of these senses, to settle down over time. I will mention, I don't have any personal experience or any relation to this, but Annie Hopper has the DNRS program. Her expertise is chemical sensitivities and food sensitivities, and that is her personal experience. I've heard both good and bad things about DNRS. Take it for what it is. If you want to look into that, that's fine. However, you can absolutely take some of my general recommendations on knowing what's going on. And I just explained my perception of what causes chemical sensitivities with a couple of examples. It's real, you're not crazy, but that knowledge therapy will help you be less fearful of it. Because I don't think your body is being poisoned, but your brain thinks you are, right? I don't think any of these chemical exposures are actually at the toxic level. But if your brain thinks they are, it will react as if you're being poisoned. And so it's really important to understand just kind of the knowledge therapy alone can help you breathe a sigh of relief and go, okay, even though the symptoms are wild, yes, leaving the area where the exposure is, probably not a bad idea. But at the same time, we want to calm and soothe and breathe and relax. and get ourselves out of the panic mode, out of that freak out mode, into the reassuring, hey, I'm going to be okay. This is just an overreactive brain and limbic system, and primitive brain just in fight or flight survival mode. And when you can teach your brain that you're actually not in peril, you're not in this life-threatening danger, your brain can slowly and over time, with consistency, can start to turn down the sensitivities, and more importantly, the reaction to these chemical products. Because once the brain says, okay, we don't like them, but they're not poisonous, and the brain actually gets that message, it's going to stop reacting with symptoms of being poisoned. Does that make sense? So, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. For anybody who is questioning, who am I to talk about this stuff? I'm a regular Joe who's had the opportunity to speak to many dozens of people with chemical sensitivities over the years of operating in the air quality space, because these people call up and go, oh my God, my neighbor's smoking. I can't even live in my house. What can I do? Right? And so the answer isn't to fix the air quality. The answer is to say, okay, am I truly in peril? Am I in life-threatening danger? And now how can we retrain the brain to say that, yes, I can smell it. I'm not nuts. And don't let other people tell you you're crazy, because you're not. You just have a heightened state of vigilance within your nervous system, your sense of smell. And because of your prior experiences with this, your brain is literally believing that you're being poisoned. And when you're being poisoned, the brain, which controls the entire system, launches into a defense mechanism to protect us, to keep us alive. And so the goal is not to eliminate all of these potential chemicals around the world, because that's virtually impossible. You won't be able to go anywhere. The goal is really to teach the brain that, hey, you know what? I'm not being poisoned. I'm not going to die from this. And over time, I'm not saying this is an easy fix, an overnight snap of the fingers, but over time, with consistency, you can absolutely start to retrain your brain to turn off this freak out response and teach the brain that you're not actually being poisoned, and that you just have an overactive, hyper-stimulated, hyper-vigilant system that can be calmed down. And when it calms down, these multiple chemical sensitivities can go away. And guess what? A lot of exactly what I just talked about, this entire video, also applies to food sensitivities. So, for anybody with food sensitivities, take this entire presentation and just apply it to food, because it's the same thing. It's a hypervigilance. It's a fear of the food that's the problem, not the food itself. With chemical sensitivities, it's the fear of the chemical from prior experiences that is the issue, not the chemical itself. But if the brain perceives it's being poisoned, it's going to react that way. So I hope this makes sense. Again, this is not medical advice or scientific. It's just my observations from a lot of years in the air quality space, talking to dozens of people with chemical sensitivities, plus past 24 years of living with chronic pain, studying TMS, learning about it, interacting with people, having the benefit of having thousands of people on Facebook and YouTube that I interact with. So it's really just me synergizing everything that I've heard and learned about this stuff and trying to present it here for you. I hope this makes sense. If you know anybody with chemical sensitivities, they're not crazy. Share this video with them. Maybe this understanding of what's going on will help reduce their fear a little bit. And that's obviously the first step. Knowledge is a great tool to turn down the fear. When you can turn down the fear, this primitive brain can actually start to settle down. Same thing with food. And if you are the person with the chemical sensitivities, I can say that despite the severity of the symptoms, this is what's going on and how you got to this point. So if we know that this hypervigilance was learned, we can unlearn it, just like we can with chronic pain. So I hope you found this useful. Please comment below. Let me know your experience. Do you have chemical sensitivities? Do you have food sensitivities? And did you find this helpful? Comment below. Love you guys and gals. I'm going to let you say hi to Finn. He's chilling out here with me. And I guess we'll talk to you soon. Love you.